Hey, welcome back to Sidewalk Skyline podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Rogers, and today I'm having a conversation with Richard Magnussen, who last year released his memoir, Going Big, Lessons on Success in Business, Life, and Faith. And one of the former members of Parliament, Harold Albrecht from Kitchener-Conestoga, wrote on the flyleaf of the book. Richard's story is one of hard work, incredible perseverance, and deep faith in Jesus, powerful evidence of the difference that Jesus makes in the life of a family. Great leadership principles based on the wisdom of God's word. So, Richard, welcome. It's great to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you, Kevin. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and on the day that we're recording, you're still living your life of a snowbird in Naples, Florida, and heading home to Kitchener-Waterloo in just a few more days.
Yes.
It's great to have you. And before we talk about Magnussen Furniture Company, that's kind of I think probably where your greatest reach has been. But before we talk about the furniture company, let's talk about the Jesus journey that you've been on. How exactly was it, Richard, that Jesus found you and invited you to come into his kingdom? Is that a lifelong journey?
Yeah, it's been a lifelong. My parents took me to a Bible teaching church, and I remember being very young. Uh, um, Actually, it was culminated by me picking up a cigarette off the road, and I was just probably 5 or 6, and I smoked it, and I felt so guilty about it that I went home and told my mother, and she was having a prayer meeting with some other ladies, and they knelt down and led me to the Lord. And I still remember the wine couch, color was wine. And so I still remember that today. And of course, then I grew up in the church and was involved in young people's and leadership there. But yeah, that's how I got started. So I've been in a fortunate position to be introduced to Jesus at a very young age. But it's deepened over the years with growth and maturity. And
it's not surprising that a furniture baron would remember the color of a couch from when he was 6 years old.
I did. I remember the big arms, the big rolled arms back in the 50s.
Oh, those were great pieces of furniture, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, mid-century's coming back. So
yeah, but they were heavy.
they were built well. Yes, they were.
So just kind of curious, at 5 or 6, when you found a cigarette on the ground and smoked it, did you actually light it, or did you just suck on it unlit?
Yeah, it was lit. Someone threw it out of a car,
Oh,
and
wow.
I just picked it up on the side of the road. I was old enough to be outside and trusted not to be on the road,
Yeah.
but that's where I found it. And yeah, so I didn't have to light it. And yeah, I can just imagine a lot of people and the germs and everything else related to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I found. I knew I was wrong, but I wanted
We
to just
didn't really know about germs when we were kids, eh?
that's true. We did.
I remember one kid when I was about grade 1. We lived in Cambridge, and we lived in these apartments. And I remember it was a day, and there'd been rain, and there were puddles on the parking lot. And one kid, like, bending down, like drinking water out of the puddle like a dog. And it's amazing that we survived.
We survived.
We
Yeah.
survived. Yeah. Tell me a bit more about your family of origin. I think we learn things from our family, from our parents. How did they shape you in ways that you were going to need through life? And um, then were there other things that you came to an adult conclusion that I have to grow past where my parents were at.
So my father immigrated from Germany, and he met my mother in Canada, and they were married. And so his immigration story is in my book as well. It's quite interesting, his travels coming to Canada from Germany in 1929. And so he had a small business and, well, actually worked for a furniture company in Waterloo and then lost his job during the Depression, and then ended up buying a chicken coop and living in half and then starting a small shop in the other half. And so that's how he got his start in the furniture business. And so I grew up going to church, and but I learned through the Bible. It was a great Bible teaching church, and I learned at my level and then right up through teen and college age that it's an incredible foundation. And I had a college teacher that had been a good mentor of mine. He actually was also teaching at the church I went to. Sunday mornings, he would take the young people's class, college age career. And he just shared with me many things that he saw that I probably was a hard worker and was going places that would be his testimony. But he said, success and financial success is going to be your biggest challenge in your life. And I didn't even understand it at the time. I deal with it in the book, but I didn't really understand it because there was no financial success at that age. In fact, I felt I was hard done because my parents would give me a very small allowance, but I had to do an awful lot of chores around the house and cut the grass and do the weeds. And so feeling a little hard done by, because my other friends would get double the allowance and didn't have to do anything. So I was taught at a young age to value money. And so that's kind of my background. I was passionate. I wanted to go either become an architect or a builder, and then or I had this opportunity to go into my dad's business. He was going to retire in the 70s, and I decided I would go in that direction, thinking it would be boring. And in fact, I told him that. He just smiled. But it was a small shop. We only had a couple part-time people working for us. But I thought, there's an opportunity there, and if I don't like it, I can move on. So that's the background there. Learned an awful lot through young people's taking responsibilities, then working as a young leader, and then finally as a deacon in my 20s, which surprised me at that young age. But I learned a lot. As a provider, an employer, you can pay more money, you can pay bonuses, you can influence people. But in the ministry, you don't have the funding, although it has a big paycheck at the end. You've got to learn to energize and mobile people for the kingdom. So I learned so many lessons from very young, and I contribute a lot of my leadership from that early age of involved in, and still am an elder in a church for almost 40 years. I hate to admit that because of the length of years, but boy, time moves.
Sure does. How about your mom? What was her impact on your life?
My mom was really a sweet person. Everybody loved her in the neighborhood. She was a great encourager. The neighborhood would really go to her for counseling. And my dad was a hard worker. He would start the morning very early, and he would work very late, 6 days a week. And so that was a European influence, and also the Depression that formed him, in losing and being responsible for the work when it's there. But he was very optimistic. He would say to me, I've never forgot the saying, the impossible we do right away, the miraculous is going to take us a little longer. And so it was an attitude of no matter what the issue is, you can figure it out. And if you can't figure it out, find somebody that can tell you how to figure it out. So I grew up with that influence, and that was very positive. He was a perfectionist in his trade. He was hard to work for because of the perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
He had to be perfect, and most of us couldn't live up to that. But he taught me a trade very young.
One of the guests that I interviewed recently, Peter Oakes, is in Kansas and has a company down there. And part of what he does is he's gone into 2 prisons down there and employs guys working in prison that are ready for work. And they have their manufacturing right in the prisons. And he's not paying them 12 cents a day. He's paying them a standard wage. So some of the guys, when they um, eventually are released, they've had this incredible influence from Peter and his team, building character, and some of them are able to be released from prison and leave with a stockpile of money. They've been able to save, nowhere to spend it there, other than
Right.
the tuck shop. So they save their money, and when they leave, they're able to get on with life again. But we had a conversation about excellence, and one of the things that I remember saying was, I think sometimes we confuse excellence and perfectionism. Perfectionism is gunning for excellence, but perfectionism is never fully content. And but excellence is something else. And you write a little bit about excellence in your book. Tell me what your view of excellence and maybe how that's grown and changed.
My view of excellence, read the book In Search of Excellence, and it impacted me. But from a Christian perspective, the scripture is pretty clear that we need to do what we do unto the Lord. And so when you do that, you do it to the best of your ability. Excellence is not perfection, but it's the best of our ability. But it also has an attitude with it, which is probably the most important, is we do it unto the Lord. And I remember my one daughter coming home when she was started working for someone, and the boss probably could have used a little training on how to handle people, but my daughter would come home and vent and say, "This is not good leadership." And I'd say, "You're getting a great education." And she said, "What are you talking about, Dad?" And I said, "You are learning many things that you shouldn't do, and you learn from both of them. So when you start your own business someday," which she did eventually, "you can learn and apply those things." And so it's an attitude, as much as it is the hard work. And so that's part of my foundation, coming from my dad combination and my mother combination.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there's something spiritual, isn't there, about excellence that gives us, as we pursue it, all things unto the Lord. We get, I think, a certain amount of comfort in doing good work, right? To to
Right.
to feel like, oh, I did my best, and I'm trying to live my life with the right attitude before the Lord, and the right attitude towards people who sometimes test that. Um,
Yes.
I got to ask though, you grew up in Kitchener,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
and uh, the podcast I have, I talk to people primarily in Canadian cities. Peter Oakes was an exception, being in Kansas, but most of the time I'm talking to Canadians. And uh, Kitchener-Waterloo is a different kind of urban area than any other Canadian city I know. It's um, it's high tech, it's big education. It You can get on a street that has one name. Is it King Street? You can go north, you can go south, you can go east, you can go west. Um,
Yes.
there's it's got this confusing grid of streets, and then um, right around Kitchener, you have a huge old order Mennonite community in Elmira and other rural areas, and you go to the mall and Conestoga Mall, and outside in the parking lot, there's a shed and tie-ups for the horse and buggies, next to the Teslas. And so it's such a unusual city. Talk to me a bit about Kitchener Waterloo and I mean, you grew up there, so what do
Right
you love
there.
about it?
Well, it's a great town, and uh, it's very diverse, like you said, from horse and buggy to Tesla, where you can charge your car. It was, you don't think much of it growing up, but as you get older, I start to realize the impact of the two universities it had on the city, and University of Waterloo in computer science. And in our first home, I actually deal with it in my book. We housed some students, and they were in computer science, and I learned a lot about what they were learning, and it was really, really cool. So I think the universities have had a big influence on especially on the high tech, and so it's brought a lot of business to the area, and I think that's why it's really strong. It was more of a in the early days, it was more of a furniture town. There was a lot of furniture manufacturing in Kitchener-Waterloo. And actually, Kitchener was named Berlin in the early days. And then when the war
Oh,
came
that's
on, it
right.
changed to Kitchener. And so, but we have probably one of the best um, farmers markets around. People come from Toronto all over to be at our market, especially in the fall season, but all year round, actually. And so it's a great heritage, and um, we don't call it downtown Waterloo anymore. We call it uptown
Hmm.
Waterloo. And we used to refer to it as downtown, but I like the positive spin on uptown versus. But yeah, and it was labeled one of the smartest cities on the globe by one of the magazines. And I read that on a plane coming back from Asia. And I was wondering who this town was. And then I read Waterloo. So that's the influence of the universities.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's impacted by that. And then it's got the richness of the basics of basics. And um, the Mennonite community is great. We go right to the farm and get our maple syrup in a gallon. I love talking to them. And as a
Yeah.
kid, my dad used to take me out there, and they were wonderful people, and but very knowledgeable. And
Mhm.
there was as much as they had primitive transportation on this site. They had a wonderful factory that was a machine factory, and they were building theirs, but they kept it separate from the house, which was an interesting thing. But that's the heritage, and they often say it's a European heritage, German heritage of hard work as
Mhm.
well as a
Mhm.
result of the way the people were brought up in that town. So we love it.
So your dad comes from Germany to Canada. He starts a furniture business. He meets your mom, and their life can just they have a great life in many ways. Then you make that decision in the 70s. Well, maybe I'll take over dad's company. He's retiring. And it went from an annual revenue of $38,000 to today over 200 million. You now manufacture 150,000 pieces of furniture a month, 300 team members managing 10,000 contracted workers globally, selling furniture in over 20 countries. You've been elected as president. I'm reading out of your book. Elected as president of the American home furniture industry, and working with foreign governments. You know, I think from a business perspective, you've been highly successful. And but let's talk about the furniture business and the title of your book, Going Big, because that's what you did, right? Not just with the furniture, but in everything in your life. You're a man of vision, right? You see what could be, and I love that quote from your dad. Impossible is what we do today, and miraculous will take us a little longer.
That was my dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a great heritage, and I wasn't sure because I knew it as a kid, as a part-time kid. I would sweep floors at 10 for my dad in the little shop. And then as a student, I'd work after school on Saturdays. And I really learned the trade, could build a piece of furniture, he taught me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the beginning. And I didn't have a vision to be an international business. I just applied what I learned. And when I took over, it was very small volume. And first thing I had to figure out is how to get sales. I wasn't trained in sales. I didn't understand marketing. I didn't understand the difference between sales and marketing. Because I was 20, I did not have a university degree. But I decided I'd go to Toronto with a credit book to find furniture stores, make sure they had good credit, and then I'd go and try and sell them my offering of small tables. And I did two things. I tried to sell what I had, and then I listened to the customer what they want. And then the Leon's furniture store, Ed Leon, I had to work up my nerve to go in there. And at that time, there were only about 5 stores. But it was kind of nerve-wracking to go in there. And Ed Leon was a great guy, but he was all about business. And he taught me a lot of things about the furniture retail side of what they needed. And so matching, we only made coffee tables and end tables at that time. And so matching those to the upholstery is the first sale. And then you have to have tables that complement it. And so he helped me really shape that. And I did some manufacturing for him that matched some upholstery for him. And then he introduced me to the manufacturer that was making the upholstery. And then from there, they wanted me to come into their showroom in Toronto. And it really grew. Our little manufacturing plant was going crazy. It was so good that I was not afraid of hard work, and I was working along. But I remember the spot in the little shop that I got on my knees and said, Lord, I can't do all this, because I was trying to run the production, run the sales. And although it was small, it's still the same amount of things you have to do. And I knelt before the Lord and I said, I want you to take this business over. I didn't quite understand what that all meant, other than I knew I needed help. And so I can't say it was anything magic or anything changed, but I had more of a peace that we would continue to grow and succeed. And I'll never forget, one of my first tests was, I had this theory that when I became more financially sound, that's when I would start giving financially. And I remember a missionary teaching at or coming and explaining what was going on in an African country and the need for this. And the Lord really laid on my heart. My wife and I had been just married, and we had our first house, and we were saving to buy some furniture. Even furniture people buy furniture. And although I did make some of it, and the Lord laid his heart on that $5,000 we had put away and saved. And I thought, oh, so I went and talked to my wife about it, thinking that Marilyn would say, like, well, maybe half. And she said, if the Lord's laying that on your heart, we need to give it, which was, it shows how we want to have our own way, and money was really important to me. And so now my new boss, who a few weeks earlier I'd said turn the business over, he takes all the finances, personal finances, and I give them away. And so that was like shocking, but we wanted to be obedient,
Mhm.
and we did. And a year later, although I wasn't even thinking about it. It dawned on me one day that we had over 3 times the money in our account for that furniture.
Yeah.
I was taught to grow up to save and then buy,
Mhm.
not buy
Mhm.
and pay on time. So it was a great lesson that I learned very early on.
Mm.
And so the business grew, and I started to hire good people, people that were much smarter in areas than I was. And I think as a leadership, I learned that hiring the best people is the best. Some people don't because they're a little insecure that they may take the business in a direction, or they may take it away from you, or as a supervisor, I've seen that in my own supervisors. They want to make sure they hire somebody that isn't too smart. And so that's a big lesson I learned, that the team you put around you is how important it is. And so that was part of the success. And we started growing. We started manufacturing. We started growing, and um, we I was copying designs from two large American companies. We wouldn't even rate on their radar, but I was copying their designs and making it in Canada for the Canadian market and being very successful at it. But the Lord convicted me one day that I was really stealing their designs. And so I determined I was going to call the CEOs. And I thought, well, I'll never get a hold of them. But anyways, I got them, the two of them separate independently on both calls. And they were a little surprised at me calling. And but they basically both said independently of each other. One was in California, one was in Ohio, saying, "Well, you just don't copy us, and whatever royalty you would uh, pay it to a charity." And that's how both of them answered the question independently. And what I really, Kevin, learned through it was um, that I hadn't even thought about. When you copy, you have to sell on some reason because the design's out there, and the reason is a lower selling price to get the business. And what happens is you don't have the margin that you would if you created new. And so Magnussen developed at that point using a lot of designers, and we got very creative, and people would start coming to the market to know what new innovative pieces of furniture we had, which um, really was helpful in Canada. But when we moved to the US and started marketing in the US, that was a big deal to have
Mhm.
something fresh and looking new. And it's not that you don't look at other products and understand what's going on in the marketplace, but you don't copy the design the way I was doing it. So that lesson of humility uh, was something that I learned an awful lot. But
Mm.
it was really I had to dial the numbers a few times um, to get it right because I was so nervous to call these people. But God used
Yeah.
that in my life to teach me a valuable lesson. Creative offers more opportunity, and we set a trend to be more design oriented.
I hear a bit of a theme merging, your conversation with your daughter about learning from your success and learning from your mistakes. Um, what, your experience is unique for a lot of people have not had that kind of success. They may have been able to keep a business going for a lifetime, but not expanded that to that level. What are some of the temptations that come when it starts to um, multiply exponentially. Did how did you what kind of things would come to you that weren't maybe there, when you were in your 20s working out of the old shop, right?
Right.
Now you're flying around and you got dozens of people, and what what changes in terms of the magnitudes of temptation?
Well, success, um, I believe God honors success, but he wants to be first in our lives. And what happens with success and material wealth can, not in all cases, but I would say in our case, we started becoming very successful. The customers would say, your product's great, it's selling. And we started, it was very successful. And we started believing our own press about how great we were. Because by that time, I had learned the difference between marketing and sales. And when in our
Yeah.
marketing, we had some great offerings and some good, but then we became um, pretty proud of where we were in the marketplace, and we expanded rapidly. We got higher debt than we should have had, and in 2008, when all things
Mm-hmm.
hit the fan, I remember even a weekend the banks wouldn't trade with an international bank because there was fear in the world. And our business tanked by about 40% of our orders, like in a
Wow.
few weeks. And once you have that overhead you're running at, a drop in 40% in a few weeks to a month, it was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was it was very sobering and a great reminder that we can get ahead of our skis because of our pride.
Mm-hmm.
And I deal with this in the book. Um, we the bank wanted to call our loan, which was fairly significant.
Yeah.
And my advisor said, don't put any money in the business because the bank will probably grab it all. And so I met with a bankruptcy lawyer, and because of the pressure, because uh, trying to find another financial institution when things are really tough, and the
Yeah.
bank, it wasn't just deliberate of us. It was because they didn't want to be in the furniture industry because nobody has to
Mm-hmm.
buy furniture when
Mm-hmm.
things are tough. So we ended up having to get a private lender at 18%, which is just
Wow.
really hard.
Yeah.
But through it all, and in the middle of this, there was a lawsuit that we had going that someone had damaged the company, and it took 13 years. And I wanted to drop it, but my lawyer said, no, don't. And the week I needed to come up with $2 million, or the bank was going to close, this settlement happened for $2 million. And so I'm thinking, you have got to be kidding. And uh, it was a miracle, some would say, and some would say, well, it's just a coincidence. But that was the timing. My management team looked at each other and said, wow. And so that settled that. And then we got our business back in order and became, very profitable, very prudent on debt. And so that's how success can lead to us thinking bigger,
Yeah.
not watching our indebtedness, being, thinking, well, we're pretty invincible and we can win. So great
Mm-hmm.
wake up call. And
Mm.
yeah, so um, quite humbling, but my boys would call me and say, are we going to make it? And I'd say, well, we're going to work hard and just keep praying.
Yeah.
And if God has a different plan for us, it'll be a good one. And so it turned around quite successfully. And even our accounting firm wanted me to go on the road and talk about turnaround of a business. But I said, thanks, but I'm really interested in staying focused. This furniture business is a tough business. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so that's kind of one of the stories related to growing a business and
Mm-hmm.
how
Mm-hmm.
our success is wonderful and how we can become full of ourselves. And I wouldn't say that I was not thankful to the Lord, but I would say that I had some pretty strong principles that got softened with debtedness and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, and thank God he's gracious, and we learn, right? We learn that in our weakness, his strength is revealed.
it is, and we
Yeah.
need to have a teachable attitude
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
we can learn from everybody.
Did you always have that?
I was taught by my dad, the statement was, if you can't figure it out, go find somebody that will. And my dad was very inquisitive. I watched him ask question after question of people in general life, not just business, but that's a really important thing is we can learn.
Yeah. Tell me about Creekside Church. You've been an elder. That's the one I think you were saying you've been there for about 40 years.
Yeah. Creekside Church. Ken Taylor was the pastor, founding pastor, and we were a small group of under 100 that decided we would go and start this new work across the city. And so we did, and we were going to do things a little bit more contemporary. And we were going to move away from King James, although we had nothing wrong. We just felt there was translations that could be more effective to reach people.
Mhm.
And we wanted to get the church outside of the walls of the building to reach people rather than have our own little club. And it's so easy to become interested in everybody in the church. And so, but not so much out. And Ken Taylor used to tell me that, there's 4 tires on a car, and the one that needs to keep getting pumped up the most is evangelism, because we tend to want to talk to ourselves. And so Creekside has had always even in our surveys of our congregation, we want to know where they are spiritually. And it's amazing how they will tell you where they are by asking certain questions. And so we were very cognizant of where we were. And Creekside grew to, I think I read this past Sunday was 2,700 people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're in multiple sites now. But that was a lot of growth from that. And I learned so much in working as an elder, as we led people. I contributed a lot of that. People say they don't have time to serve in a church because they're busy. I know what busy is, but I would honestly say you're too busy, and you should be in the church learning and serving. And we each all have a same gift. I mean, everybody's gift is different. So, but you learn so much from serving, and you see how God works in lives. That's inspiring. And I have a great wife, and she was a stay-at-home mom, and she covered for a lot of me as I traveled a lot. Got a lot of air miles, and so it took me 4 years to use them up after I retired. But that's amazing what God can do through you if you stay in touch with His work. And I was using my skill set in the ministry, and God has blessed. And Creekside is a strong church, but we just pray that we would stay successful in His eyes by reaching the lost and making it relevant for them to understand it. So we run a lot of programs for the community. We run Alpha. We run marriage retreats, and my wife and I had a woman say, well, she came for divorce care, and she came to know Jesus. And so we have a lot of those programs that are helpful to the community, but point them to Jesus. So staying relevant, staying on our knees, and that's really critical.
You've mentioned Marilyn several times in the conversation, and I'm curious about your story with Marilyn. You tell me about a lifetime with Marilyn.
Well, we dated when we were teenagers, and we were married. She was 19 and I was 20, and looked pretty young now on our wedding pictures. But we we were aligned on our Christian values, and God really blessed. And she was a stay-at-home mom, and I was able to afford that to help her stay at home. And when I traveled, I would come home, and she'd give me the rundown of where everybody was.
Yeah,
And so I'd have dates with my kids, and we would talk through things. And a lot of them never realized how much intel I was getting from my wife when we talked about it. But it allowed me to catch up in their lives, and know where there's some areas that maybe I could be of help to them. And as much as I did travel, though, I went to their sports games. All my kids were in sports, competitive sports, and when I was in town, I was at their game. And so I asked my 20-some-year-old one time, was I away? Where was I? And then she said, "No, Dad, you were at all our games." And so that was an interesting thing. I probably wasn't at all our games, but I probably was pretty loud when I was at the game too, cheering them on. But yeah, that's so. Marilyn was a big influence on helping me see things, and she was also a great partner. And she would read a lot of books, and we would go to. She would find out where there's marriage conferences, and we would go on a regular basis just to get fed.
that's good.
And we went away on a vacation once, 1 week every year, even when the kids were small, so that we would, had some time to ourselves. So it's coming up 54 years that we've been married. And I signed a contract at 50 for another 50 years with her, or we did not. So anyways, I deal in the book. Marriage is 100%, 100%. It's not 50-50.
That's
It's
right.
100%, 100%, because we have to give it our all, even when we don't feel it. And she's a spirited gal. She's got some Irish background. So what I love about her is she's not one that just takes whatever I'm suggesting. She will work that thought through. And so, yeah, so it's been a great relationship.
Yeah, when
But
you're first married, that takes some getting used to, doesn't it? That they challenge your thinking,
the
and
first year was the toughest because I
yeah,
came kind of an entrepreneur background. I didn't even know
hmm
when there was official supper hour, and her dad was home at 5:10, and
hmm
they ate at 5:30, and I didn't even know that was official time. But she was kind enough to teach me there is a phone, and you can pick that up and tell me what's going on. And so I learned to do that. So yeah, but year one was the toughest. But um, getting some having a retreat with other couples, and that has been very helpful over the years.
that's good. And so, how many kids and grandkids?
I have three children, two girls and a boy. The oldest boy has five grandchildren, and then the next has two, and then the youngest has three. So a total of 10 grandkids. And I have one great uh, granddaughter.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's amazing.
At the end of your book, you did something that I thought was really beautiful. Um, Family blessings for each of our children and grandchildren, life verses, all taken from the NIV. And but when I read through, there's something unique and special and uh, it really speaks to who they are. But talk to me a bit about the writing out the blessings for your children, your grandchildren. How did you approach what you wanted to say to each of them? Did that come easy, or was that lots of preponderance leading up to that?
Yeah, lots of preponderance, and on that one, I did that with my wife, Marilyn.
Mm,
We worked on that together
hmm
because I want it to be right because we're making a statement about that about my the three couples and then the grandchildren. We're making a statement about their lives and what we see in them,
hmm
and they're old enough for us to see patterns.
Yeah.
And so we discerned that a lot. That section took a lot of time, but and then tying the right Bible verse to it at the end was
hmm
so important. And we would, um, but backing up a little bit, just so you understand about the book, I did not want to write this book. It was my wife who influenced me for 5 years,
Wow.
saying, you need to write things down. And I said, it's just not me. But anyways, I did, and she wanted me to leave a legacy for my children and grandchildren, and so that's why. And then the blessing was part of that. And so it started off to be family, and then family and friends, and then uh, my editor feels like there's a bigger market for people that are living life
hmm
and working in churches and working in the marketplace,
hmm
just doing life. And so putting that down and then putting some questions at the end of each chapter
hmm
about the thought, some things to think about.
hmm
Um,
It remind the blessings section reminded me of in Deuteronomy when um, uh, Jacob is giving the blessing to each of his sons, each of his sons, and in there's one I especially like in Deuteronomy 33:12 of Benjamin. He said, "The beloved of the Lord dwells in safety. The high God surrounds him all day long and dwells between his shoulders." And I
well,
thought, wow, Benjamin, wasn't he the one that got duped in Egypt and had to stay behind with Joseph and the false accusation but Jacob knew that about his boy, that the beloved of the Lord dwells in safety, that things can go wrong, but God is with you, and you're going to be all right. The high
yeah,
God surrounds him all day long and dwells between his shoulders. Well, there's only one thing I know that's between our shoulders, right?
our head.
And and that God lives inside our head.
Yeah, he does. And one of the goals I had was to weave in. I read Proverbs. I read Proverbs a lot.
Mm,
Um, I don't want to say to a fault, but I would
mm-hmm,
focus on that every day. I'd read a chapter. Like if it was the first of the month, I'd read chapter one and go through 31 chapters, and then start over again. I wouldn't say I've memorized Proverbs, but I have a good understanding of Proverbs, and it gets in our head. And so when you have family um, or challenges or whatever, or you have business challenges or just personal challenges, I'm amazed at how that comes to my mind of what the scripture has to say. People say, well, the Bible's, a lot of people I would talk to, the Bible's not relevant. But when I ask, they don't read it. And so I would say that it is an incredible book of wisdom, and it's timeless. And the Holy Spirit uses it to get the knowledge from God's word into us. And you do not have to be a Bible scholar or a Bible school graduate. You just need to get into the word and learn it. and it does take some time. But as you see through my book and the chapters, there's verses that relate to the thinking on the issue that we were dealing with. And that's very deliberate because that's my life. And I don't want to say, boy, you'll see in the book where I have made so many mistakes, like stealing furniture designs. But God is merciful. And when we humble ourselves, he does bless. And I'm not a big person in prosperity gospel that our motive is we do something good to get something. I think God does bless a person. I've got enough experience to know that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always come in material things or whatever. It can be just in many other ways as well.
He blesses us with what we need, not in comparison to anybody else.
Exactly.
And he blesses our diligence when we do it unto him and serve him. There's going to be some kind of giving back. God gives everything to us, and we give everything to him, and he gives it back, and we give it back to him. And it's just such this shared life with God. Talk about going big, eh?
Yeah. And the title, that was something I struggled with. But
yeah,
the real bottom line when you get into the book, the message is going big with God and trusting him. And not going big for our own pride and ego, but it's amazing what you can accomplish if God is with you. And so that's my experience, and I give him all the glory for it. But going big was a title that I struggled with, but was challenged that when they look at my life, that's kind of the way I see it. But it's really rooted in going big for Jesus.
Yeah, that's good. So good. Hey, you're retired now, and have you, throughout your life, have you always thought about the end of your days, or is that something that you think more about now, or is it much between the shoulders? What goes on when you think about the end of your days here on the earth?
Yeah, well, I think writing the book is a way I can share my faith and share my family experiences that could maybe be helpful to others. So that's part of trying to share the, and the warts and the things that are not perfect, and then share how God has used them in my own life. I think that's very helpful because we all, I know of a gentleman that has read the book, and he somehow viewed me as having everything perfect. It was actually one of my daughter-in-law's father. And he shared that he's so surprised I had all these issues or problems or challenges, which surprises me. But I guess from his perspective, he saw what he saw really when he saw me, which wasn't a whole lot, but we've known each other for many, many years. Yeah, the legacy part of it is important. I also realize that there's a lot of people in ministry that sometimes struggle with, just putting 100% your faith in it. God is very gracious. He gives us a challenge and we can handle it, but we take it to him to handle it is the key. And in the marketplace, people separate the business life and they separate the work life, and they try and put them in two silos. It doesn't really work that way. And today there's pressure, like, maybe believers aren't respected or whatever, but I think just quite the contrary. I have not felt that disrespect at all. In fact, they may not agree with me on my spiritual position, but they are respectful that I'm willing to share it and to live it. And of course, they do walk the talk. They do watch for walking the talk. But you can always, when you go off the tracks, you can always ask for an apology or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that actually endears people more, even with your own children, when you have to go back to them and apologize that you had the facts wrong. So I would challenge that it's, and I do mentor young business guys, and I see them trying to silo these two things, their spiritual life and their work life. And God will really honor if you can put them together and just be that one person and not be bashful. There are some, I remember in college, someone was really riding me, and then another friend had said, "Well, you just back off," and he took my position to take care of me, and he wasn't even a believer at the time. He became a believer, but I was surprised. I said, "Well, thank you, Lord, for using this guy that doesn't know you as his life leader yet." And so, yeah,
I think that friction is actually vital to a disciple of Jesus. That not that we don't want to create friction. We want to be at peace with everybody, but the presence of Jesus in our life, the way we live. If somebody is fighting with God, then they might fight with you, and not even realize what they're doing. But for us, when we get antagonized or ridiculed or anything like that, it actually reminds us, I think, that oh yeah, I I'm not actually of this world. I'm in it.
yeah,
I'm doing my best to be salt and light here, but this isn't my ultimate home. I'll come back.
exactly.
I'll come back to it with Jesus someday, and we'll do some things then, But do you think you'll be building furniture?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think we'll be having a great time, but we'll be fellowshipping with the Lord, and it's hard to
Yeah,
even comprehend how good that's going to be. We
yeah.
try and understand it a little bit. There's little touches in the scripture to help us understand, but it's yeah. We are created in His image, and He's a builder, so
Yes, he
that
is. Yeah,
encourages me. I love it.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so retirement has been I've been busy. I'm on a bunch of boards that
Hmm.
nonprofit ministry boards,
Hmm.
and I stay and I'm still an elder.
Hmm.
And though I'm here in Florida, I get in on Zoom, and
Yep.
it's exciting to see what's going on.
Yeah.
I keep offering to step down, but they say I'm a historian, and I don't think old, I think young. So I said that I'll take it then.
Well, you still have 40 some years of the marriage contract to live out. And
That's right.
so you might as well stay busy with other things too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Richard, it's been so good getting to know you and to uncover the walk with God that you've been on all these years. Uh, and I'm just know that your life is going to continue to be an adventure of spirit, and that you will always age with grace. And it's been good getting to know you. And um, there's a lot of more things that come to mind that I'd like to talk about, but I think that's probably a good place for us to wind down. And I'll put a link in the show notes of the podcast so people can find your book. And I'll throw in a link to Magnussen Furniture as well, so people can can see some of the things that you've been involved in all these years.
Yeah, well, thank you, Kevin. It's been an honor to be part of it. And yes, they can get the book on any online service as well. So really appreciate the time you've given me, and thanks for the discussion.
Thank you, Richard. And that was Richard Magnussen. You know, one of the things that I really enjoy on this podcast is when I get an opportunity to talk to somebody who has lived a lifetime of service. And we have a lot we can learn from those who are older than us. They were part of building something that our lives often are living in consequence of or in benefit of. And so great to know that guys like Richard Magnussen made a difference in their realm, in the business world. Well, on the next episode, we're going to be at our City Windsor conference, and one of the keynote speakers is a return guest, Maury Blair, the original child of woe, Maury Blair. He's 87 years old now, and he came and shared at the Our City conference, Our City Windsor. And every copy of his book that we had and a lot of the copies of the graphic novel, they just went out the door as fast as they were available. People sit at Maury's feet and absorb so much of what he has to say because you know it's coming from such a genuine place. So on our next episode, we're going to listen to Maury as he revisits the child of woe. So come on back, and until the next episode, keep on listening. If you haven't already done things like subscribe, or if you're watching on YouTube, like the episode, subscribe to the channel, that kind of thing. If you're listening to it as a podcast format, by all means, please do leave comments as well. That helps the message to go even further. I'm Kevin Rogers, and you're listening to Sidewalk Skyline Podcast.
Studio 61.